In relation to item 10.5.1, which is the free waste vouchers, that could potentially fit that category. I will be staying in the room for the debate and vote on that matter, as I don't think it has any impact on me and in the community. In relation to item 10.3.2, which is a town planning matter around Pilot Street, my super trust owns a property in close proximity to that development. I on that matter, and 15.6 matter. My husband had some involvement years ago in working for council on that matter, and I propose leaving the room for that matter also.
Item 15.6 in confidential, the legal matter. I have a perceived conflict of interest in that. I will be staying for the vote.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. I've got a couple of perceived which I'll quickly read out. Item 12.2, which is the transit centre bus relocation. I'll raise a perceived that my wife has a business in the Maryborough CBD. The car park area and long haul parking is outside the CBD boundary. I'll raise a perceived in relation to that one. And for item 15.4 and 15.5, which is the grants, I'll raise that two of the successful applicants, the Progress Association and the Heritage Craft Fest, will host their event. I'll declare that my wife has a business in the CBD. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further items? Oh, you're on now, Paul? No, you're still not. That's right.
Just for the
Any further?
yes.
Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Firstly, I want to address item 10.3.3 in relation to local law waste. No, that's not the one. Which is in relation to the fee concession policy 10.5.1. Previously, I declared a perceived conflict of interest in relation to this report as it had come before council. I just want to identify, for the interest of transparency, that perceived conflict no longer exists because the nature of the report has changed to a degree that doesn't involve just any community group. It involves community groups that have clothing bins and the like. So therefore, I just, for the interest of transparency, want to state that conflict that originally occurred, in my view, is no longer a perceived conflict, and for that reason I'll be staying in the room. In relation to item 15.3, which is a confidential item, Regional Arts Development Fund Round 1 for 2018 recommendations. One of the proponents in the officer's report is doing some volunteer work for she's doing it as I'm not involved with the organisation. The organisation, what I've read, so therefore it's
On fee concession, the patron of the Harvard which isn't a very clear position. I'm not a volunteer. Chairing their AGM organization, but given that I'm the patron and they're the actual organization forward, I'll be leaving the room for the one. Further, the IT's all right. The next item on our agenda. So we'll go on meeting of 28th of February. To move that this be accepted as true and correct. Right. All in favour? Opposed? The next meeting of March 2000 have been distributed. Minutes. Is there somebody who wishes to move? Corrected it. Are you happy? Yeah. So you wish to move them? Any opposed? Them is from this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Walk to presentations from the Vietnam of the old Pyoba Railway, now in its second 10-year. The need to separate the general area, improve support clients. Mr. Acting Mayor from the Vietnam Veterans Association, support Cole's position. He has on the office manager's daily function that the character of that precinct. The site would also be free, which he thought, and he speaking to the council, he just approval location. Mr. From Scott talked in funeral services cases. Significant decision. Families an option to the character, nature. He believed that there are a number of both public and private spaces. Botanic Gardens, Wuku Park. The final speaker was Dan Siege, so Dennis Station, Drury Lane. That a levy on the western side of Yarra to improve the residents who overlook for those more public engagement and invite better. He also, in relation to the absence of that development. So,
thank you, Ken. Invitations and the Progress Association. And the presentation. We need a sorry, I'm just effectively that the report. Does somebody want to move that I move to Councillor Mack. Any speakers? Any opposed? We'll just wait till we get. Okay, Adam, you have 10. That way it'll be recorded on the video.
Thank you. Much, as I said, for the invitation to come down here on behalf of the association to really look at some master planning options for the Esplanade. This area, and in has not. If we can just go to the page on the one of the main things that is how we can take such a key part of the and really turn it around to be a vital asset, but also obviously for the business community. One of the things we obviously looked at here was to try and integrate with the wider aspirations within council's master planning, and in particular to look at what has already been done with regards to establishing this region or this precinct as a fitness and wellbeing precinct, and to also then capitalise upon some of the existing recreation, tourism and event potentials of this site as well. If I can just go through to the next page. So what we did is we've looked at a methodology that's been well established around the world by an organisation called PPS, which is People for Public Spaces. This methodology has been in use for something like 40 years and has probably been one of the most successful strategies at transforming public spaces around the world. And what it does is looks at, very simply, power of 10, which is the idea of generating multiple number of uses within a public space to appeal not only to a wide demographic of people, but also a wide patterns of use, so that you're not looking at just, say, a weekend use, but you're also looking at weekday use, morning use, afternoon use, and to try and maximise those potentials as much as possible to get a lively public space and an engaging public space for the broader community. And that's based on ideas of sociability, uses and activities, access and linkages, and also looking at the values and the images, which is really about cultural, about making space out of the space that we have there. So if we then have a look at the next page, which is just a mind map, and apologies, the text size is quite small. I mean, what we did is we focused on sort of 4 key elements really between, the tourism, the fitness, wellness precinct, recreation and event space, and to look at the opportunities within that, and to target both existing as well as potential, what was already happening on the site. I mean, anyone who's familiar with that site goes down there on the morning. There's lots of yoga, there's lots of Tai Chi. All of those things are already existing patterns of use down there that can be built upon quite successfully and extended upon. If we go through to the next, probably past the next 2 pages, because I think most people are probably familiar with the site. We're just looking at the site analysis. So the extent park in particular, and I suppose the best way to reference that is really between the tennis as well as in the sailing club. There's currently a couple of existing structures within that space, and there's also existing pedestrian linkages. The boardwalk has just been finished probably in about last 3 to 6 months, linking into Aquaview. So there's some existing infrastructure connections, car parking at the back on Freshwater Street. And what we wanted to do is zone. Again, these are the sort of things that try and promote the commercial precincts on the side with whatever might happen, and as a catalyst for development. What we're trying to do here is add value, so not only but anticipated uplift in value in terms of pedestrian linkages along the Esplanade. The idea there was to then, with the shared an area where we could promote as much cross flow of pedestrians, and to limit not cars in terms of being able to speed to which they would. I think if, again, we've got a 50 Ks, if we were to drop it down to say about 40 Ks, we're probably only looking at an increase there of a couple of minutes in terms of actually going along the Esplanade. So the idea was to then create a car parking space, which is already in existence along Freshwater Street, to then promote, as you can see here with the diagrams, greater movement through the the commercial zones with pedestrians, which really then increases walkability and then also increases some of the commercial value of those zones as well. The next one is then just looking at the value of the site. One of the things too is that currently the site in Bill Fraser Park doesn't have a great connection to the beach itself. And really it's only at Aquaview and at the sailing club that you then have that sort of permeability down into movement from the park into the beach space. What we wanted to do was really look at creating a revetment wall with steps, and that steps could also then double up as things like event seating for things like any of the sailing boat activities, as well as offshore powerboat racing, anything of that nature. Even just the ability for people to use those steps as a casual sort of seating place for takeaways or anything like that. If we can just go to the next one, which is the actual. So this is the actual proposal for the master plan, and what we wanted to do is, scale-wise, I'm hoping that's sort of legible, but I'll see if I can go through. So up in the very top left-hand corner, there's a yoga deck there, and what we wanted to do was sort of have that slightly a little bit secluded, so that, again, it promoted that use of yoga, Tai Chi, those sort of things, which sort of more relaxation, and then to also capitalise upon the outlook over to the water, and then again the connection to the beach. We didn't see that needed an actual formal connection to the beach, but more one of the ability to outlook over the water and create sort of more relaxed outlook and connection to the water. The next one is the fitness stations, which again are existing already there, and we felt that we could capitalise upon that, so that sort of became a great circuit choice. What we then did is, within the revetment walls and the steps that you can see just in the connection to the beach, we created a lap pool. So we created a lap pool, a plunge pool, and then the lagoon pool. The idea there is we wanted to, again, promote the use of a number of different recreation and also wellness opportunities here. The plunge pool might be used for, say, water yoga, more sort of social things. But again, the idea there is you could have sort of more of a communal circular shaped pool. But that pool there, the idea was to also break that through the revetment wall, to actually have a glass wall to it, so that as you're also walking along the beach, you also had an end and also an infinity end to that pool. So it became more of a feature use of the infrastructure to sort of create something special within the landscape. The lagoon pool, again, we've gone for a shape here that could try and accommodate and maximise the number of uses from a wide variety of demographics. So you could have older people as well as younger families and kids and disperse them throughout that and maximise the perimeter of that pool to allow for effectively different tribes or demographics to have that space. We put around that sort of bungalows or shaded bench seating areas, as well as barbecue space. And again, what we're trying to look at here is the possibility that certainly during weekends it can be more of a family destination, as well as sort of during the week for retirees as well as for tourists. Then we've also looked at the possibility of a pavilion, and then again the idea there is to create more of an all-weather undercover space, and then link that into with a barbecue adjacent to that, so you could also promote events as well, both social as well as organised events. You can see here with the orange marks, we've tried to maximise the number of pedestrian connections and links through the site, create a gateway entrance down to the beach between the lap pool and the plunge pool, as well as maintain that the bike zone and shared bike zone, pedestrian zone, which goes along the esplanade as well. So the idea there is, again, to maximise the number of linkages and promote walkability within this space, and have this as a possible circuit within people's recreation and wellness and fitness routine throughout the week.
Just before you go on, and if I could just ask the time to be stopped for a second, can you just give us an update on how much time is left so that they know, because I understand they've got 2 speakers. 5
minutes left.
You got
15 minutes.
Yeah. So
Oh, okay. I was trying to keep to 10 with spare.
So
5 minutes left for the total deputation.
Okay.
So you've been speaking for 10 minutes. You've got 5 minutes left.
Okay. I mean, I've almost finished anyway. So if you have a look through just on the next, I've given a couple of exemplar images so far as, again, if you have a look at Bondi Pool, I mean, these become quite iconic places within the public landscape. And I think the idea here was to create something as a catalyst and something quite sizable as a redevelopment and rejuvenation of this park, and then to use this as an opportunity to spur and encourage further development, and to, I suppose, also put a floor under the existing commercial operations within this whole precinct as well. And then also, again, looking at the next slide is just looking at the opportunities in terms of, creating a sort of engagement space for publics, and bringing families down as well. And then again, walkability is a key requirement within that. And then obviously the next slide is in looking at the opportunities for the wellness and fitness, which is, things like the Tai Chi and yoga. So we're trying to tie in as many possibilities as possible and make this quite a rich public space. Hopefully I'll finish within time. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll make this fairly quick. Basically, I wanted to have a bit of a chat today just to let everyone know that the majority of the business holders down here are behind this. We've got 35 signatures of people in principle support of the project. The project is a big ticket item. We understand, we know it's a lot of money, it's going to take a lot of time to prepare, there's a lot of ups and downsizes, but we need to actually start looking in the future and start looking 10, 15 years down the track. And that's why we feel that the parking off-site is really important, because in 10 years' time, we won't be able to drive down there, it'll be too busy. So thank you for the opportunity to present this. Thank you.
I understand that you also had a business plan that you may want to, business
yes.
model that you may wish to speak on or table as well. Is that correct? We've seen a copy of the.
Oh,
you'd like to table that? So we've got a copy and we'll table that as well. Yep.
We'll table the business plan as well, yeah.
Are you going to move that it be tabled?
Mr Chair, my goal is to seek with the consent of the Mayor that the standing orders be suspended so that I can move a motion for consideration of the council. I'm aware that Councillor Light has indicated conflicts in relation to this area before because of reasons that he can discuss, but I would say that the motion will not be of a nature that, in my view, arises out a conflict. It's simply asking that this matter be tabled, and then the motion will go on further to say that this be referred to the Esplanade Master Planning Community Consultation. So there's no substantive issue that's going to be brought forward, just seeking community consultation. So I'd seek that standing orders be suspended.
Yeah, I'm happy to suspend standing orders so we can deal with any motion you have now in the immediate aftermath of the presentation, rather than leave it an hour or two till general business.
Is there a procedural motion that requires a vote?
Well, well, it's with my leave,
Okay.
I think. Yeah. I don't think it needs to, I'm providing.
Thank you.
Perhaps it might be neater if you just move that standing orders be suspended. Do you want to move that standing orders be suspended so that we can debate a motion on this?
Yeah, I move that standing orders be suspended so that we can that I can move a motion for consideration of council.
Yeah. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Lewis, all in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously.
Sorry, I've just sent an email to everyone, and in doing so, I've just lost my own motion. Technology, no. Should we bear, Marley, did you get a copy of that? No, I haven't.
Perhaps, well, actually, once we see the text of it, I'll ask if there are any conflicts of interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent it to. It would have said. I'll have to turn my data off for 1 second and see if it'll. I sent it. I can speak from memory.
How about you speak to, you move your motion? Yeah.
Yeah, I can say what I
Yeah.
think what I think it said. For some reason, I'll just turn it off.
It really lost.
It would say, if you when you get your email, it would say that council acknowledge the deputation made by the Torquay Progress Association at the ordinary meeting number 3 of 2018. That council, and point 2 was that that the document known as the Torquay Lagoon Master Plan, and it's just come up now, yay, that the document known as the Torquay Lagoon Master Plan be tabled and form part of the minutes of the ordinary meeting number 3 of 2018, and that this master plan be referred to community consultation, the community consultation phase of the impending Esplanade Master Plan review. So the first one would have been, yep, that we acknowledge the deputation made by the Torquay Progress Association during item number 7 of the ordinary meeting number 3 of 2018. So that should be up there now.
Okay, once we have a seconder, I'll ask if there's any, so Councillor Everett is willing to second it. I'll ask at this point if there's any conflicts of interest to declare.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It's a perceived conflict of interest, as Councillor Taylor alluded to. It's well known I have a business on the Esplanade, but I'll be staying in the room.
There's 3 points are just not separated out. Yeah.
Do you want it, does it need to be formatted for us to speak to it easier, or?
Yeah,
Okay, Councillor Taylor as mover, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah. Firstly, I want to thank the Torquay Progress Association for coming today and for presenting something that they're very passionate about. I can indicate that through conversation with both myself and Councillor Everard, and it's no secret to the team at the Torquay Progress Association that I didn't warm to this idea. It wasn't something that I thought, wow, that's the missing piece for the Esplanade. But having said that, what I was very impressed by was the passion and the vision that members of our community had for this space. And it's not just about, while the title refers to a lagoon, it's not just about a lagoon, it's about a solution for that area, and a solution that's been provided by community members, which I think is simply fantastic. It talks about some water space, but it also talks about an Esplanade shared zone, and it's something that I've advocated for a long time. I believe that if our Esplanade is truly going to become an icon and a tourism icon, we need to rethink the way we look at it, and I think this is the first step, and it's great that the Torquay Progress Association hasn't only invested their time and their enthusiasm, but they've actually invested money into getting this solution. So from my perspective, it's not for me to decide whether or not this is too big or too grand of an idea. I love big and grand ideas, and I think it's exciting that we can look at these things, and rather than look at the problems and look at the reasons why we shouldn't do it, we should be looking at the reasons why we should be doing such visionary and aspirational projects. And in that respect, I think it's important that we go to community consultation and just see, as part of a holistic plan, so looking at we have the Esplanade Master Plan coming up soon for review. That is going out to community consultation. We have considered things in that previous plan that weren't formed from this council table, but was formed by community feedback, like helicopter pads, like swimming pools on the ocean, adventure playgrounds. Some of those ideas were captured and have actually been implemented. The adventure playground in Pyalba is a classic example of that, and also the work that's been done in Scarness and also in Torquay. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that community has provided some feedback, visionary idea, and that we ask the community what they think.
From now on. Just before I go to the seconder, I just want to
That
confirm...
was 4 minutes and 59 seconds.
Just before I go to Councillor Everard, I just want to confirm that the perceived conflict is minuted? Yes. Yeah, okay. All right. Councillor Everard, do you wish to speak as seconder?
I promise I'll be brief. Look, this is a great example of community coming to council and having a discussion, and also council listening to community. As with Councillor Taylor, there's some aspects when I first saw this proposal, I nearly fell off a chair, Bob. I'll just say that publicly. But look, there's some great features of this proposal, and it'll be good to have it fed into that Esplanade Master Plan so the whole of community can comment. So hats off to the Torquay Progress Association. As Graham indicated, this is about for the future of the region. There's some big dreams in there, and council has to consider those. So congratulations, Torquay.
Are there any questions or speakers against? Yeah, question?
Yes, thanks. I'm just wondering, perhaps the CEO can advise on whether, before we send this out for public consultation, it ought to be considered by the council itself. I mean, we haven't seen this master plan other than the presentation this morning, most of which, of course, for obvious reasons, was not easy to follow. Certainly impossible to run a ruler over. I'm just wondering whether the procedure mightn't be that we consider it before it goes to public consultation.
My view is that, like any idea that was presented at the last phase of consultation, is that they go out effectively unfettered. It's not something that I wish for council to endorse. What I seek is for that this form part of, in the same way that anyone can put feedback into the master plan process, that it goes out unfettered to the community for consideration, and then it comes back with a bit more refined approach later on, so that we don't have to go as far as to endorse the project. I'm certainly not asking my colleagues to endorse this project. I'm simply asking that it be considered for community consultation, considering the actual submission itself has come from the community.
Any further questions or speakers against? Any further speakers in favour? So there's no speak.
I might need to just amend that
Yes.
to make allowance for the so where it says that the document, so it should be that the documents known as the Torquay Lagoon Master Plan, and after master plan insert the words and associated business plan, and then it will say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any further speakers or questions? If not, there was no speaker against, so you have no right of reply.
Shame.
I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? No, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. The next item is ordinary item 8, receipt of petitions. Are there any petitions? Councillor Truscott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I have 2 petitions this morning. The first petition is from Chief Petitioner is Jennifer Watts. This petition is requesting that Council inspect and investigate if any improved alternatives for car parking arrangements can be made in North Street in Maryborough around the Croquet Club. This petition has 65 names in total, but 54 signatures. So I'll pass this to the CEO for consideration and response.
Yeah, rather than, would we normally take them as a block, or are we happy to, do we need to move all the petitions separately?
Taking the box up to you, Mr Chair.
How about, we'll get to the end, and if people want to separate them, otherwise we'll table all the petitions at once. Yep.
Thank you. The second petition I have is from Chief Petitioner Kathy Anderson, and this petition is requesting that Council investigate options for a new public pool or alterations to an existing public pool that will allow for further physiotherapy and hydrotherapy exercises to be performed appropriately. This petition has 272 signatures on it. So, as well, I'll pass that to the CEO for consideration and response after acceptance.
Thank you. Are there any further? Councillor Chapman?
Yes, Mr Acting Mayor, I've got one here from Bruce and Leonie Alexandra, 1 Conservation Drive, Kingfisher Lakes. This has gone through, for the 75 people have signed the petition, 59 properties within the estate at Kingfisher Lakes, 4 refused to sign, but 5 were vacant. To the Chief Executive Officer, Mayor and Councillors of the residents of Kingfisher Lakes wish to express our strong opposition to Pantlands Lane becoming a through road into Conservation Drive, Kingfisher Lakes, as in result will increase traffic and road congestion and will detriment the pedestrian safety. And they've all been, there's 75 signatures there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further petitions? Okay, we're just doing up the motion now. So it'll read that the following petitions be tabled. It'll identify that be tabled and referred to the Chief Executive Officer for action. Is there a mover for that motion? Councillor Truscott, seconded Councillor Light. Unless you want to move Councillor Chapman. Is that all right? Yeah, okay, seconded Councillor Chapman. Any speakers? All in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, the next item is item 10, Officers' Reports, Open Resolution Register, pages 35 to 36. Yeah. Councillor Madden.
Through you, Mr Mayor, a question to the CEO. I note on page 38 of the report, review of councillors' portfolios, that the status, I think, is needs to be updated because I don't think that's current. I also note that there are a number of other items on the outstanding resolution, one on standing committees, one on council attendance at measurable meetings, and also a governance framework, which seem to me to be, I guess, tied in together. So if the CEO could give me an update, that'd be appreciated.
Yep. Councillor Madden for that question. The actually outdated since since the last status, we've actually had a governance framework review report, and as a result of that, we've decided to establish a governance framework review committee, and those matters will be referred to the governance framework review committee for consideration. and I'll ensure that it's updated in the next council's minutes.
Acting Mayor, I've got a question for the CEO in regards, is the ETA for the resolution regarding the Burham Heads boat ramp and the operational plan? It says April, which is next month, page number 39. 39, it does say the report to be submitted in April. I'm just wondering if the ETA of that is correct. And the motivation for me to ask that is because of the ongoing issues with the boat ramp and safety concerns with the community out there, which is brought to me nearly on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I can refer to the Director of Infrastructure Services to respond to that question.
That report, we have received the report from the consultant councillor, and we're just going through a review process now, and it should be coming to the next council board meeting in end of April. So the date, the target date is correct. Thanks.
Any further questions? Recommendation on page. Is there a councillor to move that? Councillor Everard, seconder. Councillor Light. Any further comments or questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. The next item is pages 57 to 71, the organisational performance report for February. The recommendation is on page 57. The report be noted. Is there a mover?
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move that.
Councillor Mattern, is there a seconder? Councillor Light, do you wish to speak? Councillor Mattern? Wish to speak?
No, I don't think, Mr Acting Mayor. No.
Any questions? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried. The next item is item 10.2.1, expressions of interest for the Maryborough Airport. You wish to move that, Councillor Truscott? Is there a seconder? Councillor Everard, do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Truscott?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Now, I'm pretty sure, I'm just checking that there was a slight amendment to the wording of point 1. I think it... Point 2, Councillor. Oh, it's point 2, sorry. No, I think... in here, it's in point 1.
Well, this is what we'll be voting on.
Book 1.
Yeah.
Business and employment opportunities at Maryborough. Okay, all right. Sorry, thank you. Yes, happy to move this. We've seen some growth in the area surrounding the Maryborough Airport precinct in recent times with the addition of the RV space out the front. Currently working still on the availability of fuel at the Maryborough Airport, and now in the process of the creation of the Maryborough Military Aviation Museum. So there has been interest through discussions with private business about the potential to establish further businesses on and around the Maryborough Airport site, and I find this exciting because it proves that we have this potential there for more in our region, which means more jobs as well. So I believe that opening up this possibility of expansion on the site and seeing what interest through this expression is available from the private sector in the airport area will be an exciting opportunity for the council. Residents will recall in previous years the opportunities that have been missed, and so I think, yeah, it's good that we can move past that now and find new opportunities, and especially with the rapid. There are new and different ways that we can utilise this. I look forward to seeing what response. Thank you.
Councillor, is there any questions or speakers against? Any speakers in favour? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried. The next item is page 74, new subdivision requirements. Item 10.3.1. Did you wish to move this again?
Yes, yeah, happy to move
is there
that.
a seconder? Councillor Light? Yes,
oh, yep,
Councillor Truscott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Light, for seconding that. I'd like to thank the staff for bringing this report back so promptly and for the detail that they've provided as well. I appreciate that this will note a future amendment to the planning scheme for street trees and for road widths to be catered for in that. I believe I spoke enough about the benefits of suitable street trees previously, and I stand by that, and the key word being suitable street trees, depending on the location and surrounding infrastructure that may vary, and yeah, happy to move this.
Councillor Light.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yes, congratulations to Councillor Truscott for bringing the first motion up regarding a report on this. There's certainly, I've had a concern, and it's been well stated publicly, about width of streets and, can we say, estates, and it's something that I think that we broad need for different types, but I'm concerned when there seems to be a large preference to developments that are too narrow streets for outcomes. So certainly wider streets with more trees. Thank you.
Any questions or speakers against?
I have a question in relation to the actual motion itself, or the officer's recommendation that's formed the motion. My confusion is that we talk about the proposed major amendment package for the planning scheme, and point B is the statutory and non-statutory consultation with community. My preference would see that point A is that statutory and non-statutory consultation within community and development industry will be undertaken in relation to the amendments made, and then as a result of that, subject to that consultation, that we have a future proposed amendment. And I just think it does seem backward, or is that the process that we're following? We seem to be point A, making the an amendment or putting it towards a major amendment package, and then going out to community consultation through non-statutory and statutory. My view would be that you'd go to non-statutory consultation, and as a result of that, you'd form a recommendation to the amendment, and then go through the process required under the Act.
Thanks. If I can answer that, I don't think there's any issues in relation to that sort of consultation process, and I don't necessarily see that it requires a change to the officer's recommendation prior to undertaking any community consultation, whether it's particularly the non-statutory communication, which is what you're most concerned about. We'll come back to council with the plan on how that's going to be undertaken.
Is there a supplementary question? No? Looks like there is. No? Something's ticking over in there. You don't know?
No, well, it's something is. I'm not even sure what it is. But we are talking about a proposed major amendment package, and we're talking about formulating it and what it's going to entail, and then we're talking about community consultation. And to me, that it's the actual way it's worded doesn't reflect that consultation prior to, because I understand that once you've made the amendment package, you're required to go out to consultation. So there's consultation that occurs after, and that's what that's referring to. My understanding was that we were going to go out to some pre-community consultation. I'd like that reflected in the motion if possible.
Well, do you want to allow the director to respond, or are you proposing an amendment?
No, not necessarily. I just thought it does state in point B that that consultation will take place as part of the proposed planning scheme amendment process. So
yeah, he's talking about non-statutory though. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the director?
that's part of the process.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is certainly an important consideration that we have consultation on an informal basis in the first instance with the industry. Last night we held our first development industry workshop, if you like, and we're doing that as a regular series of workshops, taking the industry through technical issues. And last night we talked about the Planning Act provisions and the changes, and we did discuss, and Councillor Chapman was present as well, we did discuss future workshops and the subjects for those future workshops. And one of the subjects that we identified immediately was this proposal, and looking at potential changes to subdivision patterns and the issue of street trees and the like. The industry certainly is interested in having further discussions with us about the options there, and we'll be seeking to get informal feedback very early in that process to inform our further work.
Were there any questions or speakers against?
Well, I would just be asking whether consideration will be had for a slight amendment. No, well, all you'd have to do is, in my view, is in point B, if you took out and non-statutory consultation and added to point A, subject to non-statutory community consultation, so you're indicating that you're going to have some consultation before and then your statutory consultation afterwards, which you're required to do. Would that...
Is that amendment acceptable to the mover?
Yes, I can accept that.
And the seconder? Yes. Okay, that's now the motion.
Yep.
So, yeah, and then there'd be statutory consultation in point B. And then in point A, you would just have the words at the front of it, where before a future, you'd put subject to, at the very front, the start of the sentence would read, subject to, oh, we don't need to put non-statutory there, do we? Just community consultation.
And perhaps so
Community and industry consultation.
Yeah.
That's a good little amendment, thanks for that. Can I take credit for that? And comma, yeah. And then A, the word A, yeah.
Okay. Are there any further questions or speakers against? Are there any speakers in favour? Councillor Lewis?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I do want to endorse this and just make a couple of very brief comments about it. It is, I suppose, a matter of concern that whether or not we have street trees, as our plan is currently constituted, seems to depend upon whether the developer thinks he wants to have street trees. Now, I'm conscious of the need for developers to make a profit, but on the other hand, there is a problem if our future streetscapes, our future communities are driven solely by the developer's idea of what will best for him or her make a profit. Development's fundamentally important, but it's important, I think, that how our cities and our communities are going to look in 10, 20, 30 years' time ought to be a decision for a body such as this rather than for developers. And so I think it's fundamentally important that we place trees front and centre. I couldn't help but think while the Yarralee Circuit deputation was going on, while it's not a street tree issue precisely, but you know, a band of vegetation is a terrific dust trap. It solves a lot of those sorts of problems. I know that the town planning is a subject to fashion, and the current fashion is smaller lot sizes and smaller streets. Perhaps we can't have them both. Perhaps, as someone indicated in a recent briefing, there's an opportunity for smaller lot sizes in certain locations, but in other respects there ought to be the opportunity for creating the leafy and cool suburbs of the future. So I think it's really important that we carry this, and that we carry not just the development industry but the community with us on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Chapman?
Yes, I'd just like to put here, this is just showing that the future of what this council, where we're heading to where we have been. And you go and have a look at other estates around different regions within Queensland, and you see the ones that have actually got trees in them and are starting to establish in that. And they're likeable places to live. And you can walk along the streets, you've got shade and everything like that. And I really think that this here is just showing that we do care for what we're going to have for tomorrow, and leave a better place for everyone.
Any further speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. The next item is item 10.3.2, pages 78 to 92, the development reconfiguration of one lot into 89. Yes? Councillor Maddern, yep. Councillor Chapman's moving the recommended motion. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? Councillor Hanson, do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Chapman?
Yes, Mr Mayor. This was actually brought up at the last meeting, and we've actually put it on hold on the last meeting to talk to the people that make sure that they knew the difference in the rates, and they were very quite happy with what they're doing and everything like that. So. I just think that, yes, it's an industry decision of theirs, and I feel that it will not be detrimental to the caravan park or to the community around there. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the recommendation. It's good that we went back to the developer and point out the fact that they're going to be in line for a huge increase in rates, but they've accepted that, so it seems all good to me, so happy to support.
Any questions or speakers against? Any further speakers in favour? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thanks, Anne. The next item is page 93 to 164, local law number 7, waste management 2018. The recommendation is on page 93, I presume, page 93 to 94. Is there anyone who wishes to move that motion? Councillor Madden? Councillor Light seconded it. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Madden?
Yes, sorry, I'm a bit caught on the hop here. I guess the point that I'd really like to make with this is that the regulations that govern our waste management are now a regulation under a state law. That's going to be taken out. That regulation has a sunset clause in it from the 1st of July. So really we are required to manage our waste. And in order to do that, we have adopted the regulation and transposed it into a local law. A public interest test has been carried out, so we've done all the appropriate consultation, but the regulation has worked effectively. We're transposing that into a local law which will work equally as effectively, and I think what I'd really like to point out to the community is it's going to look, sound and act exactly the same as it currently is. There will be no changes that will be noticeable to the general public. It's just basically a transfer from regulation to local law.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Councillor Light?
No, thank you, Mr.
Any questions or speakers against? Speakers in favour? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Next item is item 10.3.4 on page 165, application for development permit, reconfiguring one lot into 57 lots. This is Riverheads. And the officer's recommendation is on page 167. Is there any, Councillor Chapman's moving it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Everard, do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Chapman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is an alteration to the application, and it was found that the smaller lots on the site wouldn't work with the drainage, and so what they've done is they've come back with wanting bigger lots, which I think is a better design, and with the corridors for wetlands, like for the drainage easements and everything through it, the way it's worked out, yeah, I'm in favour, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to support this one. Any development in the area, I think, in Riverheads is good.
Are there any questions for the officers or speakers against? Any speakers in favour? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any against? Carried unanimously. The next item is item 10.4.1, amendment page 216 to pages 219. Now, the recommendation is on page 217. Is there a mover of that recommendation? Councillor Everett? Councillor Madden. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Madden? Is there any questions? Is there any speakers against? I'll speak against it. I'm against this. This is in the heart of my division. It's something I've spoke to people for years about, the need to improve the water quality, and one of the key aspects of that is that it's silted up and that we need to dredge it, and it's something that I think the residents expect and that I would like to see happen. Are there any speakers in favour? Given there was a speaker against, you have a right of reply. And you got the right to reply.
There's a question, Mr.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. There's maybe let Councillor Lewis ask a question.
Sorry, I just wondered if the officers could advise us. I mean, the motion is to defer the dredging works until the operations can be informed, etc. I mean, do we have a time frame on that? Perhaps I've missed it. But
through the chair. We are looking at briefing the strategy out in the coming months, so it'll be next financial year to get the study or the operational plan in place, and then the probably most likely works to be undertaken in the 1920 financial year. That's the plan. Thanks.
Councillor Everard?
Another question. Just in relation to the discretionary fund, it refers to the discretionary fund used in the capital budget for dredging, and this is now going to be redirected. In consideration, it formed part of a policy relating to discretionary funds for councillors, and it was identified through that process and then adopted by the budget. How do we navigate redirecting that to another area without consulting the councillor who provided that discretionary fund in the first instance?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks for that question, Councillor Taylor. The council officers don't make that decision. That's a matter for the councillor who has responsibility for discretionary funding, and with regards to capital, it would come back to council for a decision. So it's not a decision made by council officers.
But saying it's been redirected, I guess, does the council in question who have some say?
It's proposed that it be redirected. It hasn't been redirected. It's proposed that it be redirected to another project.
Any further questions?
On page 218.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, my question is, does the councillor who set that discretionary fund, and I'm saying this simply because it could impact all of us at some time, does the councillor who provided that discretionary fund get an opportunity to defer it back or redirect it back into another project, or is it just going to be put back into the pool of money?
If I can respond, yes, the councillor does have the councillor who's responsible for that discretionary funding has the opportunity to redirect it, but with respect to capital, it may need to come back to council for endorsement, as did the original capital discretionary funding.
Any further speakers or questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everyone? Okay. Everyone but me, all against? All right, that's lost 9-1. So the next item, I have a perceived conflict of interest, so council will share this one.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'll just wait for the Acting Mayor to leave the room. I'm not nervous. Okay, so item on page 220, item number 10.5.1, which is the waste management fee concession policy. I imagine you've all read it. There's an officer's recommendation on 221. Do I have a mover for this? A mover is Councillor Chapman, a seconder. Councillor Everard. Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Chapman? No. You're right. Is anyone, we'll start with for. Anyone for this? Against? Any speakers for and against? So we take this to the vote. All in favour? Against? Unanimous. So that would have been 9-0. Okay. No, 9-0. Okay, so we'll... Unanimous, yes. So we'll invite the Acting Mayor to resume as the Chair. That was easier than I thought.
All right, the next item is the one making statewide news at the moment. Proposed use of council reserves for funeral ceremonies. Moved by Councillor Truscott and Councillor Everard seconding it. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Truscott.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. You can time me if you want, but I shouldn't be 5 minutes. So, yeah, and it is pretty amazing that I did not think this would get the attention that it really has. So this motion seeks a report on an investigation of council's parks and reserves to find suitable, secluded public locations that may be capable of holding a public funeral service. I've spoken to a number of people about this issue over the last few weeks and months, and it has raised some interesting discussion. At the very least, people have found that the conversation needs to be had. So requests have been made in the past of public outdoor funeral services. I believe we are all aware that death is a part of life. However, I acknowledge that funeral may be possible. Council should not interfere of some potential locations. Our parks and open spaces are very regularly used for events and weddings and birthdays. And weddings originated in the church, but are now as much or perhaps even more held in our public spaces. I'm not trying to suggest that a service for a funeral be held in a prime location like the Orangan Pier on a Saturday at lunch, but we have a very different cultural way of dealing with funeral services in Australia when you compare us to other places, like when you think of what they do in New Orleans. I'm not suggesting we need to follow suit there, but I'm asking people to have an open mind in when funeral services are almost always held on business days and during business hours, and perhaps it can be considered in the report and policy that, should this pass, that allowances are made for funeral services to be booked only during the hours of, say, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on business days, as an example. Currently, Council does not have a policy to deal with this type of request one way or the other. I'm not suggesting that there will be necessarily a huge uptake in individuals wishing to have services in parks, but I am asking that if a deceased person's wish or that of their family was to hold a service for their loved one in an open space, a celebration of someone's life, that Council investigate options to create a policy that will suitably deal with this scenario. Thank you.
Councillor Everard.
I think this is a great move, as Councillor Truscott identified. Times are changing, and I think we have to move with the times. Not everyone wants to be sent off in a church or a crematorium chapel. When this one first came up, for me it was, as a beach user, as long as it's in the right location. And I think this will be a good move, and I do think that other councils will follow us in this one. It is important to respect the wishes of those families who are wants to be sent off by the water or in a park. Let's accommodate them. It's about give and take, and as Councillor Truscott said, it's not going to be every park all the time. And I think this is a great step forward because the times are changing.
Thank you. Any questions or speakers against? Any speakers in favour? Councillor Lewis.
Yes, if I might briefly, I'm disappointed that Councillor Truscott's got in before me in relation to the issue of New Orleans. Certainly, I would hope to have a jazz band at my funeral, and I hope you're all able to attend. But seriously, I've got an open mind on the outcome of this. However, I think there's something to be said for our community generally to be comfortable with the notion that death's part of life. And it may well be that funerals in appropriate locations would that without creating offence or inconvenience for the mourners. On the issue generally, I look forward to the report. Happy to support the resolution.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Chapman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I look forward for the. But I'd just like to make sure that consideration of the community is taken into this report also, is this is the chance for the that our parks should be used for. And so I feel that if anyone out in the community wants to speak up about this report.
Any further speakers? If not, Councillor Taylor.
Motion, and one that I just simply don't like. It just makes me very uncomfortable. I don't like the idea of future. I understand that there are people in this society that have had to deal with trauma, and I don't think walking along a secluded area and coming across a coffin would necessarily. Having said that, I think my reasons for not liking it are based on my own subjective views, and no real valid reason why I shouldn't support this motion, other than the fact I hope I never have to come across in some dark, secluded part of the Fraser Coast some people walking a coffin through a secluded area. So, yeah, let's see the report, but certainly it's something that I think we need to be cautious about.
Councillor Light?
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I will support this motion, but I do share some concerns, as so does Councillor Taylor, about some issues with this. But this is only for a report, so I think we have to give every to get that report done and for that good community debate.
Thank you. Any Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too also have some concerns about it, but given the fact that it's only a report, I'm quite happy to support it. I'd have some concerns about families and little kids being in the park at similar times, but look, I welcome the report to come back, and then we can make a decision from there.
Thank you. All right, I think there was a speaker against, so you have a right of reply. Yeah. Oh, you don't have to take it up. Well, I took your one as speaking against it.
No, for clarity, that was I was speaking for it.
Okay. Oh, wow. It's not joining my debating team.
Wasn't against it if that was for it. So.
All right. Okay, I'll put the motion then. Okay. All in favour? Any against? No? That's carried unanimously. All right, the next item is Councillor Mattern has given notice, the proposed All Abilities Playground for Maryborough, page 231. Is there a seconder? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. This is one of those really exciting things that happen to you when someone comes and knocks on your door and says, you know, we're a community group and we'd really like to do something for our community. And we'd like to put in an All Abilities playground, and they've identified the site, which is the Tanana Hall. And actually, all things apart from the fact that it may be subject to flooding, I perceive it as being a good site, centrally located, off-street parking. So it ticks all the boxes in my way of thinking, except that we do have to deal with the possible flood issue. It's exciting that these people want to put their hand in their pocket. They want to go out and fundraise. They want to put something together for those people, to give them the same facilities or similar facilities to the rest of the able community. I guess I was horrified to discover that I didn't understand that there was no in Maryborough. I knew there was one at Huffy Bay, and that we have one piece of equipment that's designed for disabilities. So I think it's a huge gap. It's been pointed out to us by the community, and I'm very, very happy to support them in a process to get this going. It does require council to first of all tick off on the site, if they do, because it is a council-owned site. So it does require council involvement, and also when these projects are put together and the equipment's put in place by the community, council then has to take the responsibility for the maintenance and depreciation around that community. So it needs to be a partnership between council and the community, but I'm excited to see that the community are happy and asking to be part of that partnership.
Councillor Chapman?
Councillor Madden, and for bringing this to the council as it was brought to her. Community up, this is what it's all about. Community is, you get the people in the community that are working and thinking about building a community. Over a few years ago, I think that this was starting to walk away. We were starting to lose a bit of this in our community, and I think it's on its way back. We had the Progress Association, people coming to us with ideas. Now we've got the Tanana. I think this is great, and we'll be supporting this motion.
Any questions? Yes.
This is a matter of process for me, and it's the same as the next motion that's coming before us. it is very much the case that this matter could be considered in the budgets, in our budget deliberation process. And this motion isn't a case of that we are actually endorsing the development and construction of an All Abilities playground for Maryborough. It's just simply saying that the funding for an All Abilities playground be referred to or considered in the 2018-19 capital budget. I have two concerns, and one is that I wouldn't want to see it become common practice where we put reports up of our intention to seek for things to be modelled into the budget. So I think our budget process has a structure to it, and that structure is healthy. But if it's the case that we'll then have a motion every time that we flag our intention to raise a matter in budget, that makes me feel uncomfortable about the process, because I think it can be misused. I don't think it has in this situation. The other part is that that when we're talking about referring something to a 2018 and 19 capital budget, and we're nearly at the end of that process, we now then have to effectively remodel and work through the process to see whether or not there is actually funds available for that. So while I'm happy to support this motion, the proposition that you provided in relation to this area will receive the same amount of rigour as any other matter that council have to consider, and I don't want it to be a case that we support this motion and therefore, and particularly in relation to the next motion, that we then are saying that council are going to construct or build. We are simply considering it in the budget. My view is that the budget in this case, deliberations are too far on for it to be considered, but happy to.
Any further, that was speaking in favour, I think.
For or against?
Yeah. Any further speakers or questions? Councillor Truscott?
Thank you. I can understand and agree with what Councillor Taylor was saying, but I do in principle support this as well, because I've done a bit of work over the last couple of years with the Maryborough Special School, and worked with the students there, and particularly on access over the Liberty Swing at Ulula, and so I think having a facility like this would be good, and I look forward to those discussions in the budget discussions.
Any further? Yeah, Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I endorse Councillor Taylor's comments, and I see the problem in that these sorts of propositions are very good ideas, and indeed they are as difficult to vote against as voting against motherhood. One of the problems with that process is that we could all roll up to each meeting our favourite projects, and they're all good ideas, and we would feel compelled to support them. I guess I'm going to vote for it, because this and the next one refer to the projects being considered in the capital budget, and I would assume that consideration could contemplate the possibility that it'll be deferred a couple of years and put in the 10-year plan. Yeah, they are really important projects, and happy to support them, and I hope we can find the money for them, but I hope no one's offended if in fact that has to be deferred depending on other priorities.
And I'll just make the point, in previous career I was on the Community Consultation Committee for the Harvey Bay All Abilities Playground, and that was a long consultation period. For this type of playground, you have to work with the special schools, with parents, with children, to make sure what you're putting in is right and appropriate. So it's, yeah, like that would have to be taken into consideration exactly what year we put it in, because it would need a significant lead up to make sure the actual components were what was desired. Yeah. Any further speakers, one way or the other? I don't think there were any speakers against, so there's no right of reply. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any against? Carried unanimously. The next item on page 233 is a motion that Councillor Sanderson has given notice for. Is there a seconder? Councillor Truscott, do you wish to speak, Councillor Sanderson?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yes, I'll try and be brief to my colleagues here. And we just spoke about timing, which I totally appreciate and understand, Councillor Lewis. At the start it says here, in relation to what I'm looking at or proposing, is a small water play area in Maryborough. a proposal, it was considered actually in May 2014, so I've already been waiting 4 years, if that's a good thing. But I think from there, I wouldn't want to hopefully wait in the community for another 4. But what I'm proposing is, as we know, while the Aquatic Centre in Maryborough has a water play area, I don't believe this meets the needs of all communities, and access requires payment of the admission fee and so forth. In our region, fantastic facility, and it's acknowledged as a premier water park for the Fraser Coast and offers a unique experience for all ages with a strong tourism focus. But given the travel involved, I believe it meets the needs of all local communities. What I'm proposing on behalf of the community is that this proposal is for a modest water play area for local residents, designed specifically for small children. So as part of that, it wouldn't be your structures that Wetside has. It's not sprouts out of the ground where children, families especially, can come along without a lifeguard, without those types of things. Where of course, it would provide a safe destination for local residents and would further activate Anzac Park. As I won't read the whole motion there, but what I'm asking Council to consider is complement our regional offerings, and it's asking that we look at, and I understand what Councillor Taylor has said in relation to the budget process, that we look at from here, if my colleagues support this, and look at seeking quotations for construction as part of this process. I think this is strongly supported by Maryborough in specific, in Maryborough, but your outlying areas, Tyro, Wooku, Boonaroo, those places that if people aren't able to travel to Harvey Bay, they can go to somewhere in Maryborough free of charge and use this on any day of the week. Winter maybe not, but I'd love to see this ongoing. So I encourage this, and it would be great use of the park that we already have. The vicinity, putting this in, and in relation to an engagement space, I think if we can build for families and of course our future generations, this is something that I don't think would be something strongly used by our local community.
In relation to this matter, I would flag that I couldn't. There was an amendment to it. That amendment, but on point 1, after deliberations, and Queensland Treasury Corporation financial, whole of life financial modelling, and subject to QTC whole of life financial modelling. I know that's something that maybe either Councillor Madden or Councillor Light might wish to refer to, and whether.
Yeah. Are you happy with that proposed amendment?
Yes, I actually have the. So Council would be very moving forward.
And so can we just wait till we get it up? Did you want to speak, Councillor Light? Did you speak to it?
Well, yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. I don't know if I
Just
suppose.
speak to the proposed amendment because the. Speak first.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not into the debate, but
yeah.
So I'll just settle that the amendment's satisfactory.
It's probably a question.
Yeah, just a seconder speaks. Yeah. Okay.
Do we need to specify Queensland Treasury Corp, because I'm not sure that our council staff are actually using that. Just leave it at whole of life financial costings.
You could leave out QTC.
Yeah, that's what I'm
just
saying.
say
Otherwise,
whole
it
life
locks
of
us
financial
into that
costings.
particular model, and we may not necessarily find that the most useful.
Yeah, so take QTC out.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, happy with that now being the motion? Okay. Yeah. So Councillor Truscott, you wish to speak as seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, happy to second this, and again, similar considerations as to the previous motion. But I appreciate that this is simply for, again, further discussions and deliberations, and happy with that whole of life financial modelling as well. I think that a small water play area has great potential in Maryborough, something that I can imagine the public and particularly the children will love and enjoy. Definitely not something as big as Wetside, but I think, and it mentions about, getting to design stage, and I think for a project such as this, and even the Abilities Playground, that if we've got some more projects at the design stage, should we be fortunate enough at any stage to get more funding like Works for Queensland or anything like that, that would have some good big projects that we could put forward for it. But yeah, happy to support this.
Are there any speakers against or questions?
Sorry, thank you, Acting Mayor. The question would be, in regards, I'm a bit uncomfortable with this motion and some of the wording, but particularly where it says it could be constructed at the cost of $350,000. I appreciate in the first part of the motion it says to be considered, but I would certainly wanting some very concrete before I could fully support it in the long term.
Councillor Everard?
Yeah, I suppose.
There's a question. Is there an answer that, I don't know.
I apologise, it's probably more of a statement than a question, so I'll do it, rephrase that. Okay.
Councillor Everard?
I'm just confused. Look, I've just got a question. Would this, and I don't know, or Director Avery, so this would lifeguard?
That part of the report, I couldn't confirm whether that's the case.
That was just my query.
Okay, and certainly that'll be part of the whole of life modelling, will be the the employee costs if required. Are there further questions or speakers against? Hasn't been a speaker against yet. Yeah, Councillor Chapman.
Just a point of clarification there. There is other zero depth water areas that do council. So, but that will come up in a report. But I just wanted to put that point of clarification because it was from the audience that saying that they have to have a lifeguard. Now, some other areas do not. Now, that will come up in a report.
Speakers in favour? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All in favour? All opposed? Carried unanimously. The next item is item 12.1 on page 234, potential parking solutions for the Riverheads boat ramp. Councillor Everard indicated he wishes to move it. Yeah. Is there a seconder? Councillor Chapman. Councillor Everard, do you wish to speak to this item?
This is a very pleasant outcome, and I do look forward to seeing this one progress in the near future. I think with this one, this project, I think we really need to look at it as a tourism asset, and in conversation with some high members of government from federal and state, they have indicated that that's possibly where we should be looking at for a partnership. I do believe that this development would be a partnership between the higher levels of government, and recreational fishing is pretty big business, and anything that can supply more capacity to that Riverheads area for parking, I think is going to be a step forward for the future.
Councillor Chapman.
Yes, Mr Mayor, this is part of my portfolio is infrastructure, and I look at the infrastructure that's out there at the moment. It's not adequate. It's not adequate for if people want to go out there on the weekend over Easter and see if you can get a boat park. You won't be able to. And I know that there'll be people that won't go there this Easter and use that boat ramp because they know that they won't get a park, and there's going to be problems. I think this is one of our major things that as a council, we've got to bring this further forward quicker than we think. On this boat ramp, and put a new boat ramp in. But one of the main things with a boat ramp is you've got to leave your nowhere for that. Why put the money into the ramp? Sooner than later project.
Thank you. Any questions or speaking against?
Question. As I read the resolution, it's really delegating authority, etc., in relation to the Ariadne Street proposal rather than the proposal at the end of the point, as I understand the report. Now that's by land some 350 metres away from the barge site. I didn't pay enough what the pedestrian facility, proposed car park and the ramp, and you know, it's a significant walk.
Up a hill.
Well, down a hill initially, but up a hill to get back, especially taking into account seniors and people with disabilities. So I'm just exploring the other option is great, but I don't see that there's anything in the resolution that relates to that.
Doesn't even look like the trailer.
So just in relation to it, the one at the top of the hill, so there is a path that was done through discretion. The path from the top to the bottom. The car park at the top is for cars, and the proposed development at the end is for boats and trailers, C2Us.
Yes, but my point was that a car park 350 metres away is not going to be suitable for a great number of car users, people who are accessing barges and so on. That's the difficulty I have, and that this resolution is really only dealing with that proposal, not with the other proposal. I appreciate the other proposal is bubbling along anyway through consultation with the state government, but I just a little concerned about whether this is going to be particularly advantageous or whether it caters for the whole of the community.
In between selected site and facility, there is a big nature reserve that is locked up and we're not allowed to touch. So this is the closest possible land that's available. But we could discuss the nature reserve, if you want. Just put it out there.
Okay.
So,
Any further?
yeah, can I?
Councillor Mattern?
I just ask a question. So, it seems to me that we're very much between. It took 20 years to get a boat ramp at Burham Heads, given all of the issues that we have around fish habitat and all the rest of that. So, I guess my question is this a staged process? So this is step one. We could probably do this relatively quickly. The other one may take however long.
Yeah, if you can, if you got an answer to that.
I think the answer to the question is yes, this is something that can be done relatively quickly with very few environmental issues that the longer term proposal has.
And acknowledging that it doesn't cater for everybody's needs, but sometimes best is what we can get.
Any further questions? Any further speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? All opposed? Carried unanimously. The next item is item 12.2, Maryborough Transit Centre's bus relocation. Councillor Truscott? Councillor Mattern, seconding it?
Yes, please.
Yes. Councillor Truscott?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I noticed that the roadworks signs I saw go up the other day, so that's great to see, and I understand they've probably been a bit delayed due to the wet weather recently, understandably. But I look forward to this outcome of having a transit centre relocation along Lennox Street there out the back of Woolworths. I think, yeah, it'll be good to provide a fresh and tidy welcome location for guests travelling into and out of Maryborough via bus there. So look forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mattern?
Yes, this is an issue that has been bubbling along for a long time, and as a state member I got pounded about it on a regular basis about the lack of toilet facilities, the presentation of the current situation, and it's not all that usable. So a relocation down to a nice area with good toilet facilities right beside it, a nice seating area is I think going to be very well received by a lot in our community who complained bitterly and long about the current situation.
Showing non-confidential one. Are there any questions or speakers against? Are there any speakers in favour? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. We have a late item here, item 16.1.1, Local Government Representation on Waste Technical Advisory Panel. And the officer's recommendation on page 289 is that Council endorses the nomination of Councillor Mattern to the Department of Environment and Science Technical Advisory Panel being established under Section 173G of the Waste Reduction and Recycling Act of 2011. Is there a mover? Councillor Light, seconded Councillor Chapman. Do you wish to speak?
That Councillor Madden will serve on that committee very well. Certainly has a great knowledge of that waste and water area, and fully endorse that recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman. Thanks. Any further speakers? Yeah, you want to, yeah, you're right? Yeah, okay. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
I feel funny voting for it though.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Now, is that the only non-confidential late item?
That's my understanding.
Yeah. Okay. Those are confidential, yeah. All right. We'll proceed to general business. Yeah, Councillor, I won't go around the corner. Basically, if you have an item, just raise your hand rather than us going in a circle. Councillor Truscott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just 3 items to bring up. So, firstly, it was a pleasure on Sunday to be given the opportunity to represent the Fraser Coast for a live crossover on Sunrise from Fraser Island, of all places, and it was terrific to just mention some of the highlights that we've got here. And I've heard it was received really well, and there's talk of them of Sunrise coming back for a couple more events in the future, so that's great. Second thing was the Australian Red Cross Blood Bank donations. Council has a group where if you are a blood donor and when you go in to donate blood, you can mention you're part of the Fraser Coast Council and out of local businesses. We're currently leading that with 24 donations there. I went in and checked it this morning, and so thanks to our staff for rolling up their sleeves and saving lives. The third one that I'd like to do is actually a motion. As we've got the Commonwealth Games about to come up, so I've just sent that through for to Marlene and to A1 as well about representing, hang on, let me bring it back, for Council to acknowledge our athletes from the Fraser Coast. So there's Matt Hauser in triathlon, Jordan Kirby in cycling, Mark Hager in coaching the New Zealand women's hockey team, and Grace O'Hanlon as the backup goalkeeper in that hockey team. So these 4 sports people will be representing the Fraser Coast at the upcoming Commonwealth Games, and to wish them all the best in their respective events. Point 2 was that Council acknowledged the efforts of the volunteers from the Fraser Coast as well. There's quite a number who are helping out for the duration of the Games, and also local Fraser Coast Chronicle sports reporter Matthew McInerney, who will be reporting on the Games. And thirdly, to suggest that to you as the Acting Mayor write a letter to congratulate the 4 athletes on their efforts. So if I...
Yeah.
You think there might be more than those 4?
I think there could be, Mr Acting Mayor, with Jay McCarthy. He also is a cyclist and possibly could be in the Commonwealth Games team as well.
Well, it'll be very easy to find out. I guess the last one, the Mayor, and then he has...
And if there's any others that have been missed, yeah.
Mr Mayor, the motion could be amended very simply by the Council acknowledge all Fraser Coast athletes competing in the competing or participating in the Commonwealth Games, including those, and then the Council, and then the third one that the Mayor wrote a letter to congratulate all athletes and volunteers for their efforts. That
for the
might
record,
be a suggested alternative.
For the live stream, I
I'm not a
apologise if I've
councillor,
missed
I can't
anyone.
amend that, but that would be an alternative to address the issues.
Happy to do that.
Council. Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Light. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Truscott?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I suppose apart from just, congratulating them on their efforts in getting to this point. What an incredible achievement, and win or lose, hopefully they win, but to be able to represent at that level is just fantastic. So I wish all of them, if there is more than those 4 that I'm aware of, wish them all the very best.
Thank you. Councillor Light?
No, I'm done, thank you.
Any further speakers? No. I'll put the motion. All in favour? All opposed? Carried unanimously. Is that your final item? Yeah. Any other items of general business? Councillor Light?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I have got quite a few things, actually. I'm just getting reports in from our disaster coordinator regarding the potential weather event. It is still very unpredictable, but at this stage, the words are not to panic and to stay tuned to the Bureau Met and our Facebook. But at this point, it appears that the majority of rain will go north, but we'll keep everyone updated accordingly. Hopefully it doesn't come, because on Saturday and Sunday, we have the Fishing Classic at Burham Heads, which is one of the largest regional fishing classics in Queensland. So if you want a great couple of days, come out. And the other thing is that just to make everyone aware in this room and the community, the Acting Mayor and myself signed a letter to the Mayor of Bega and expressing the community's thoughts and acknowledgement of the disaster that happened down at Tathra. I know that town. It's a beautiful seaside community on the south coast of New South Wales. I know it well. So on behalf of the community, we wrote to the Mayor. We've since had a reply how that letter has been sent out to community people and councillors appreciating our thoughts. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Any further items? I've got one on the Commonwealth Games Baton Relay on Sunday, which was very, very successful with events in Harvey Bay and Maryborough and Fraser Island and many community champions running. We received this plaque, a framed certificate and a replica of the baton, which I'll now pass over to the CEO.
Thank you.
So this was a remarkable thing for us to have. It's a relay that started over a year ago in March 2017 when Queen Elizabeth II started it. Since then, it's been around the globe by thousands of people have handled it. The one baton, which I almost dropped in Queen's Park on Sunday, and then it'll finally be handed to her son Charles in about a week's time on the Gold Coast, and he'll take the message out from her. So it's gone around the world, it's come through us, and I think we did an amazing job. So I'll ask Councillor Everard to speak about this, because he's been intricately involved in it on so many levels, and he is very aware of all the volunteers, an amazing array of volunteers, SES everywhere, and the community champions who carried the baton through the region.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Seymour. Yeah, it was a very a community pride-building day on Sunday, I think, to see the faces of the families of those who carried the baton. It was a real highlight. Yes, George, you just about broke protocol. Apparently touching the baton was like touching the Queen. So it was, it was noted. But we did get a really kind message from the young lady, Christy Gillam, who looked after our area. And I'll just read a little bit out of this out. Thank you to you and your local working group for your efforts in coordinating Sunday's events and pulling together all the logistical elements required for the relay. There is a lot of moving parts in the relay, and we couldn't have done it without you. Our team was thrilled to bring the relay to the region, and it was great to see the community get behind in all different elements of the day. It was a special experience to spend the morning on Gari with the Bachelor people and Nene Bird and David Anderson. A momentous occasion indeed. In Harvey Bay, we love seeing in Harvey Bay and Maryborough, we love seeing so many happy, smiling faces along the relay route and at each of the community celebrations. Even a little bit of rain didn't dampen anyone's spirit. We did punched well above our weight. Our region was the only local government area that had to support 3 community celebrations, and the Goldock were very impressed with the efforts of our staff, our volunteers and everybody who came along. They were really impressed by we had our community groups involved when showing off a few of the sports. So a big thumbs up to our community. It was a great day. I'm glad we've got a rest before the next one. But I was told that apparently Western Sydney's putting a bid in for it, and they will be happy to bring the baton back to visit the Fraser Coast. So there you go. So thanks everyone. Thanks to the staff, council staff especially. Did a great job.
Thank you. Last call for any general business items. Otherwise, we'll need a motion to go into confidential under section 2751H. that being other business for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interests of the local government or someone else, or enable a person to gain a financial advantage for the purpose. Is there a mover? Councillor Madden. Is there a seconder? Councillor Light. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. So we'll go into confidential now. Thanks. Oh, we'll discuss as soon as we get into confidential. We'll talk about it informally. Yeah. See how long.